Thank you for listening to the Conformed to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. Jay Jones, and I'm here with George Mays for Text-Driven Tuesday. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going back through recapitulation, George. Did you do this because that's how you read the book of Revelation?
Recapitulation. That's not really. That's not quite what recapitulation is.
Do they not use that term? I think I've heard all
millennials.
I
definitely hold the recapitulation, but
you didn't.
Doing
you're
what
preaching,
we're talking about here in Hebrews. I don't know if that's.
Here's what I mean. You're preaching the same text.
Yes.
But bringing out newer.
Yeah.
Or fresh realities than you did last time.
Yes.
Because last time you had a bigger section. This time you're narrowing it in on 23 to, well, we're in chapter 7, if you're following along, Hebrews chapter 7. And you took 23 through 28. So.
Yeah.
And you said you want us to.
You got me feeling like I need to cough now, Jay.
Why?
Because you're over here. Before we started recording, we're over there coughing.
I know. Sorry to messed up the podcast again.
Yeah.
Friday. Yeah, it is what it is.
You need to be popping those vitamin D.
I am.
Are you?
Yeah. I think my immune system's compromised because I had COVID a couple weeks ago, and then I caught.
As long as I've
Whatever.
known you, how long have we known each other? About 7 years?
Maybe.
Something like that. I feel like you get sick a lot, Jay.
I'll get sick usually.
Do you get the flu every year?
No.
No? Okay.
I haven't had the flu since we merged churches. When was that?
About 5 years ago.
5 years, yeah. Well, you see, George, when your kids go to school and they interact with all kinds of people, they bring home all the sickness. Yeah, that's probably why we get it. But no, I always get sick every fall and every spring when like the allergy stuff changes. I always get some type of minor thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the COVID got me, and then I don't know what this is, but not good.
All right. We'll try not to
But
cough.
I'm back.
Try not to cough over everyone.
I'm back. Yeah. Somebody told me, who was it? It was a church guest, Adriel. She was very encouraging. She said, "You probably have long COVID." And I was like, please, why did you say? Please, no. No. Yeah. She's like, I had that. And you just have the COVID symptoms like for a super long time, but you're not contagious anymore.
Yeah.
So let's pray that's not what it is. How about that?
Yeah.
So
helpful. That's good.
Yeah. So we're back.
Yeah.
I'll try not to cough.
Okay.
Do my best. And I am interviewing you. I feel like it's going to be an interview because the live stream cut off, so I couldn't listen to your sermon.
Yeah.
I don't even know, maybe 15 minutes of it.
You probably got the good part.
Was your opening illustration the good part? It got you major good points with the wife at home?
Well, I think it more embarrasses her than anything else. I didn't tell her what I was going to say, but I did tell her that my first line in my sermon was about her.
Yeah. George, you like to look at your wife. That's the opposite of when couples get to the point where they're like, I can't even look at you.
Yeah.
That's indication maybe something's going on that's in the right direction. You like to look at your wife.
Yeah.
That's good. And then you talked about, you bridged into how people love to look at cat videos, which was, I'll be honest with you, the connection was a weird one for me, but it kind of worked.
It was It was one of those things that I was looking for something else during the during my research time, and I just ran across this this statistic, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna throw this in here just for the fun
It's
of
a
it.
funny statistic, Jordan. Now you got to tell everybody. There's some weird people in this world.
There are.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I came across some statistics, 2015, that there was an estimated 2 million cat videos on YouTube that had been viewed 25 billion times.
Look at that, George.
I know we've got some.
You're glitching out.
I know.
It's a pitch. If you like the podcast,
That's right.
and you like to look at George on the podcast, his camera, which is like an iPhone 7 or something, I don't even know, maybe even older. We need a new camera, George.
It's not going great. Yeah.
Somebody out there, if you've got like an iPhone 8 or newer, just mail it to the podcast. Go on the church website, find our website, and just mail it to us, please, so that you can look at George's beautiful beard.
Your pitch is starting to sound more like begging. Please.
I mean, come on. Somebody's got to have
help
one.
us. Yeah.
You don't have any old iPhones laying around?
I've never had an iPhone.
I know somebody in the church has got to have one.
I'm an Android user, Jay.
Yeah. We should check and see if they updated the software on this and it'll use Android, because it wouldn't before.
Yeah.
Maybe it will now.
Yeah, if people have anything laying around that we could use.
Yeah. Or you could just send us over like maybe $800 so we could buy a fancy
camera. Or that.
Yeah. We'll take that too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's
cat videos.
Cat videos. Let's get back to it.
Yes, 25 billion views.
Mm-hmm.
They actually broke that down. It's like 1,200 views per video or something like that.
Now you said something.
Can you believe that? And then I found the statistic that it was estimating that 15% of the internet is taken up by people looking for cat videos.
That's the stat that got me.
Can you believe?
That's the one. That's the one that got me, bud.
Can you believe that?
No, that's crazy.
People love cat videos, apparently.
Yeah. When the AI becomes completely self-aware, it's on its way. We talked about it on Free For All Friday, but it's going to be it's going to create some type of cat manipulation monster, because it's going to see 15% of humans are obsessed with cats.
Yeah.
It'll create some giant cat cult to help take over the world. Humans.
I guess if the government had really wanted to keep everyone in their homes, they could have just provided free cat videos.
I guess.
For everyone.
I guess.
I don't know. Yeah,
you ever kick a cat, George?
Have I ever kicked a cat?
You ever have a cat that's latch onto
I've...
your leg for no reason whatsoever?
No.
Because cats.
Okay.
I don't want to if you like cats, I don't want to make you feel bad or whatever. But I mean, because I do the same thing to a dog, but dogs just don't go crazy for no reason. Usually, right? But a cat could be oh yeah, you're so nice, and yeah. Then next thing you know, it's latched onto your leg.
Yeah.
Trying to claw you and bite you. You ever seen anything like that?
Yeah.
You just gotta take that sucker and just yeet it across the yard.
The place that I go to get my hair cut, they used to have a hairless cat wandering around the room, and it would jump up on my lap while I was waiting. Ugh. It
was Dr. Evil's cat?
Yes.
Oh my.
Mr. Bigglesworth. Yes. It's gross. Yeah. What is this thing going to do?
Well,
it's like a little alien.
That was a good. That's a good attention.
What are we even doing?
It's
a Monday morning.
It's a good attention getter, because then people are oh.
We look at the things that we love.
Yeah, and you said, hey, we should be looking at Jesus every day.
Right.
If we love Jesus, we ought to be looking at Him every day. How do we do that? Well, we obviously have to go in the Word and understand who He is and meditate upon who He is.
And I wanted to make sure that when we use that language of looking at Jesus, that we're not thinking close your eyes and picture, Jim Caviezel, from
Right.
from the Passion of the Christ. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about find a picture of Jesus, some kind of supposed picture of Jesus and think about that. What we mean is that we see Jesus in the scriptures. That's
Yeah.
that's how we see him.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't have pictures of him.
Right.
We open up the scriptures, and that is how he's been revealed to us.
Yeah.
So when we talk about,
don't be so influenced, like you said, like the chosen or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember
that's your perception, like of who he is.
Right. I remember when the Passion of the Christ came out,
Mm.
and I was jumping on the hype with that also. But some people were saying this is the best evangelistic tool since like the Book of Acts.
No, they were. I remember the church we were at. They like rented the whole movie theater or whatever, and had to bring people to this movie thing.
Yeah.
And I remember the pastor said, "This movie is going to actually change the entire world."
Mm.
He actually believed it. It was going to cause like an Acts type of revival.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't think so.
I like the movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good to kind of get the historical kind of context of it, but to say that this is this great evangelistic tool is to ignore what God has given as the greatest evangelistic tool.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we ought to, when we think about Jesus, this picture that we have of him needs to come from the Bible. That's what you were doing in Acts. This morning, Drake and I were reading in Matthew, and I actually said something similar to him. There's this thing that he says, Jesus, that probably doesn't influence a lot of people's picture of who he is, but it should. He says, all things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, he gives an invitation, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, that will give you rest. But that picture of the description of Jesus, you could sit and think about it forever, like all day. That's what I was trying to help Drake to understand. Like, you need to take a pause maybe and just think about these verses, because this probably is not the picture of Jesus who your friends have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've got a picture of probably of a Jesus who's just kind of glad that you accepted him or something. And these verses go way beyond that.
Yeah.
They go back to eternity, that no one knows the Father except the Son. Mm-hmm. No one knows the Son except the Father. You're getting into like really deep Trinitarian theology with that one statement. And then you're getting into deep theology of salvation, talking about that no one can know the Father unless the Son chooses to reveal him to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a nuclear bomb into people's entire PhDs if you just take it for what it says.
Right.
And this should be painting our ideas
Mm-hmm.
of who Jesus is.
Yeah, when Jesus says, anyone who's seen me has seen the Father, he's not saying that the Father looks like a physical face.
Right.
He means that when you see Jesus's works, his person, you've seen the Father.
Right.
You've seen the same aspects.
Yeah.
Of the Father.
Every attribute.
Yeah.
The Father has, the Son has the same.
Mm-hmm.
He's of the same essence. Yeah. So here in Hebrews 23 through 28, we're going to jump back in talking about the priesthood of Christ again, superiority of his priesthood. And so you slowed down and you said, we need to just take a good look.
Yeah.
And that was good. So let's have you read the passage, and then I'll interview you about it, because like I said.
Okay. You have no idea what I said.
I've got the first 2 points.
Okay.
So,
right.
Well, you stated them at the beginning, so I know what they are, but I didn't get into the others. So.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hebrews chapter 7, verses 23 through 28. it reads, "The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office. But he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. For it was indeed fitting that we should have such a high priest, holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. He has no need, like those high priests, to offer sacrifices daily, first for his own sins, and then for those of the people, since he did this once for all when he offered up himself. For the law appoints men in their weakness as high priest, but the word of the oath, which came later than the law, appoints a son who has been made perfect forever."
All right. So last week you did you presented here's what's wrong with the priesthood of man, the line of Aaron,
Yeah.
which was by blood. No one else could be that. It's by descent, and they died. They were sinners, and what was the last one? They get all. Maybe that was all three of them.
Yeah, I think that was.
Oh, their sacrifices had to be perpetual
Mhm.
because it could never deal with sin.
Right, they were
And
offering
then you
animal
presented the
sacrifices.
superior of Christ's priesthood,
Right.
and you showed how he is
Hmm.
better than all of those.
Right.
All the flaws they have, he has none, and he's better.
Hmm.
This week, you're jumping in and looking at four things about Jesus to remind us of his great priesthood so that we could hopefully love him better, love him more.
Yeah. I mean, you've got these new believers. They're coming out of this old covenant system of the temple worship, and they're struggling. They're struggling to endure persecution. They're being tempted to go back, and I just wanted to slow down here because this is such a great picture of who Jesus is. It's such a great description of who he is. We've got other descriptions, but for me, this just strikes me as just this vivid picture of who he is. And if they're going to be persuaded to stay, it's not going to just be here's all the bad things about the old, but look at how superior Jesus is.
Right.
Look at how wonderful he is. He's not just another priest. He's not just another guy. He's more. He's better. And so I just thought that I kind of went back and forth. I could just go into chapter 8, but I just really I didn't feel like we spent enough time in it last week, so I wanted to do it again.
Okay.
Especially verse 25. I mean, I could have preached a whole sermon just on verse 25. So sometimes it just pays to take it a little bit slow.
Yeah. So your points are Jesus is our forever priest. Jesus is our impeccable priest. Jesus is our perfect sacrifice, and Jesus is God's perfect son. Is that right?
Once for all sacrifice.
Once for all sacrifice. Okay.
I tried to pick out the words from the actual text. We can talk about why I chose impeccable when we get to that point.
Okay. So let's jump in here, George. Jesus is our forever priest.
Okay.
We did talk about that a little bit last week. Maybe elaborate a little bit more on it. Yeah. And I think you obviously can see that it's clear as day there for you to see in the text.
Yeah.
But maybe talk about the more of the implications that can be drawn out of that.
Right.
For those of us living here in 2,000 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could rehash the same stuff that we talked about last week. There were a lot of Levitical priests, 83 high priests from 1446 BC to 70 AD, but then the hundreds of other priests that were serving alongside. And here comes one.
Right.
So this is a big theme that is picked up through the book. There's many and then there's one who is superior. So chapter 1, there's many prophets. God spoke to our fathers in many ways, but then there's one. He's the superior revelation. We've got chapter 10, the priests that offer many sacrifices over and over and over again. And here comes one who offers one sacrifice, and it's superior. So here there's many priests, and then there's one, and he's superior. So the one is better than the many, which I think is that's an important point for us to, I think, get across, because we often are mesmerized by numbers. There's a lot of these priests. They have to be better than just one, and yet the whole point is that the one is the summation of all of these many throughout time.
Right.
So we need to understand that the one is that he's better than the many, and the reason why he's better than the many is because why is there many? It's because they die.
Yeah.
Right. They are prevented by death from continuing, but he lives forever. So he continues forever. So he's the forever priest. He's died and he's been raised to life again. And the application is verse 25.
Okay.
And this is a verse that I've been telling people, if you don't write in your Bible, make an exception to the rule for this verse. Memorize this verse, because this verse will encourage you. It will give you hope when you are suffering with fear and doubt and insecurities, when you've got guilt from the past. Remember this verse. Because he has died and he has been raised to life, and he has this indestructible life that he will never die again, therefore he's able to save you. And so we just kind of pick this verse apart in the sermon. Because he lives, consequently he's able, not hope to, not maybe, it's not hypothetical. He's able. It's the word for dynamite. It's power. He's powerful to actually save you, and not just save you halfway. It's not the the Arminian view of you're drowning and Jesus throws you a life preserver and pulls you in, right? You got to take hold of the life preserver. He saves to the uttermost. He saves completely, perfectly. It's not even, God has done 99% of the work. You have to do 1% by believing. He saves to the uttermost. Those who draw near to God through him, because he ever lives to intercede for them. So when you sin, when you feel guilt, when you feel condemnation, when you fear that you've lost your salvation, this verse is the silver bullet. He saves to the uttermost. There's no losing your salvation. There's no I didn't do enough. I didn't say the right prayer. I didn't walk the aisle. There's none of that stuff. He saves to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, because he lives to intercede for them. He is praying for them. He's their advocate. He's their priest. And I love what many of the commentators were bringing out, is that he's not, the picture is not an angry God who is having to be appeased by Jesus constantly pleading and trying to convince him. It's his presence in heaven is, one commentator says, our Lord's life in heaven is his prayer. Like his very presence is the evidence that all of God's promises will be accomplished. They'll all be given to the people for whom Christ died. And that's the encouragement that we need.
Yeah.
It's, we truly are saved by Christ alone. We're not saved by our good works. We're not saved by going to a priest. We're not saved by a pope. Right? We don't need Mary to intercede for us or the saints. We have a perfect priest who ever lives. He's never going to retire. He's never going to pass the torch. There's never going to be someone else. It's always going to be him. And so here is your constant, never-changing high priest who intercedes for you. I brought up the fact that, in 30 to 40 years, all of the current elders at this church will probably be gone. You ever think about that? I mean, it's not as far off as we would like to think.
Right.
Like, on the off chance that, we make it to like 90, you're still like 50 years from now, all the elders will be gone. And people will replace us, where there's going to be, just if the church, if God's gracious and the church remains, there will be different pastors up at the pulpit. There will be a time that you and I will preach our last sermon at this church. But not so with Jesus. He doesn't change. He's not going to leave. He's going to be forever. And so we can take great comfort in that.
Awesome. Yeah. Jesus, our forever priest. Jesus is our impeccable priest. Not a word used too often.
You know that word, Jay?
Yeah, I know the word. Because I read, George.
Because you read.
That might surprise you, but I read.
Yeah.
Been building that vocabulary up ever since I was about 25.
Okay.
That's when I started reading.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Then read till then.
Yeah.
Maybe Jurassic Park, I think.
Yeah.
A couple of other
well, you're gonna get some good vocab words out of that book.
Yeah.
That's not a super
other
easy
Michael Crichton books. I used to. That was it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some scientific stuff in there.
Yeah. A little bit. So he's faultless.
Impeccable. So you've got these five descriptive words. He's holy, he's innocent, he's unstained, he's separated from sinners, and he's exalted above the heavens.
This is where the thing cut off.
Oh, okay. I don't think that the point is to pick apart these words and try to find like the different angles for what these words mean, because what's the difference between innocent and unstained? Like they're kind of synonymous, right? Yeah. So I don't think the point is like, here's like, we're looking at different angles of the same thing and trying to, look at these different facets. I think what he's doing is he's building up kind of like a podium, like a platform to show the exaltation of Christ. You're just building brick by brick. And it starts with holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and he's exalted above the heavens. That's, you just kind of see how he's being lifted up in this verse. And so I was trying to find a word that kind of would encapsulate all of those, and I thought impeccable was a good one. Impeccable, it means faultless or meeting the highest standard. Yeah. And that's exactly what this verse is talking about. You've got these other priests. They have to offer sacrifices for their own sins first before they can even think about offering sacrifices for the sins of others. But not so with Jesus, because he's got this fivefold perfection, right?
They're the lamest priests.
You think so? You think so? Well, they worked under the old covenant. Yeah. But the Jewish people, many of them, not all of them. I think you see the elect in the Old Testament who are understanding the sacrificial system for what it is. It's anticipatory. But for a lot of them, this was the end. Right. This is something that's supposed to happen in perpetuity. You've got the temple, you've got the priest, you got the animal sacrifices. What else do you need? And so when Jesus came and he was like, tear down this temple and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. Like, this is blasphemy. That's what they used against him in his trial.
Yeah.
It's what they used against Stephen in his trial. He's talking against Moses in this place. But it was always meant to be anticipating something greater. So it worked under the old covenant system. But if you just looked at it as an end in itself, you're missing the whole point. And so you've got these Levitical priests that are sinners, and you've got Jesus, and he's impeccable. He's got the highest standards. Did a little congregation check. I said that my wife she married me because she has impeccable taste.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you got to make sure that they're awake, right? But
were they awake?
It seemed that way.
Did anybody laugh?
Try not to get my feelings hurt.
Did anybody laugh, or
yes.
did they just?
Oh yeah, it's they got a good chuckle out of that.
They didn't just gaze at you.
They didn't.
in reformed amusement.
Yeah.
With a tiny creak in their smile. That's it.
Yeah.
You actually got some laughs.
Yeah. Yep. But I think the best pictures that we have of this Jesus is Matthew 17 and the transfiguration. When he's transformed before Peter, James, and John, and his clothes are the brightest white, and his sun is shining like, or his face is shining like the sun. And Revelation 1, where you have the same picture. Which, interestingly enough, in Revelation 1, when he shows up, he's dressed like a high priest. He's wearing like a golden sash, standing among the lampstands that would have been in the temple. And his face is shining like the sun. He's the Holy One. He's innocent, unstained. He's separated from sinners. He's not like us, exalted above the heavens. And the writer tells us in verse 26 that it was fitting that we should have a priest like this. And we've seen this this word in the book in chapter 2, verse 10. It was fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. So the word fitting, it means proper, or it's right. And so it is proper that God, in bringing many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation one of them. Kind of the same idea here. It was fitting that we should have a high priest who is without sin. And the reason why is because these priests, or we could bring it into our own day, if you have a sin problem and you come to somebody for help, be it a pastor or another Christian friend, they can sympathize with you as sinners. Like, oh yeah, I know what that's like. I know that temptation. They can encourage you. They can hold you accountable. But Jesus, as the Holy One, as the separated one, he actually can save you from your sins. He actually can do something about it. Like if you came into my office one day and you're like, yeah, I really need to talk to you about something, I could hopefully help you with that, but only as a fellow sinner. But Jesus actually can deal with the sin. And that's what he does. On the cross, God puts our sin on Jesus, but then by faith, he puts Jesus' righteousness on us. And so, whereas Adam and Eve, they tried to cover themselves with fig leaves, and God had to give them animal skins instead, God has done something greater for us in that he clothes us with the very righteousness of Christ.
Right.
And so when God sees us, when we draw near to God, he looks upon the righteousness of Jesus. He declares us justified,
right?
Not because of our own righteousness, but because of Jesus' righteousness. But if he wasn't holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens, he couldn't have done that. He would just be like all of the other priests who they can minister on your behalf, but they can't save you because who's going to save them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? But Jesus, it's fitting, it's proper for him to be like this because he actually can do what no one else can do.
Awesome.
And so that's these are I told the congregation, we're not looking at anything that is new and innovative. It's not going to be something that you've never heard of. It's going to be old stuff, but it's stuff that we hear so often that we just kind of forget what's going on. We hear these Christian words, justification and the righteousness of Christ and substitutionary atonement. We need to just stop sometimes and be reminded of what those terms mean.
Yeah.
What's packed into those things. That we do not stand in the presence of a holy God. We do not draw near to worship him in our own righteousness. And when he looks at us, he doesn't have to be convinced, because he sees the righteousness of Christ. He sees the perfections of Christ clothing us and covering up all of our sin and our guilt and our stains. And so we can, as we've already seen in the book of Hebrews, as we'll see later, we can confidently approach the throne of grace.
Yeah.
We have this gives us assurance. I talk about the Catholic Church quite a bit in this sermon. We'll get to that in just a second. But I was talking to our community group yesterday and talking about there was a I think it was an archbishop of the Catholic Church around the time of the Reformation, and he was saying that there is one heresy that outweighs all of the other heresies of the Protestant Reformation. And when we hear that, we think, well, he's talking about, justification by faith alone or grace alone or, something like that.
Right.
The greatest heresy for this Catholic leader was assurance. So you can't have assurance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't know that you're going to heaven.
Right.
You can't know that your sins have been forgiven.
I saw,
but we can.
PragerU.
Mm-hmm.
What is the guy's first name?
Dennis
Prager. So there was a clip that Prager released. It was him talking about the difference in Judaism and Christianity.
Yeah.
And did you see it?
But I know that he's Jewish.
Right.
He's actually like conservative Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So he kind of just lays it out really clear as far as he could see the difference, and he described pretty accurately, I think, what we believe to a degree. But he said, we believe in salvation by works.
Okay.
That's what he said.
Okay.
Which it's interesting because I don't think that's what biblical Judaism was.
Right. Yeah.
It was still grace, and it was about being in covenant with God.
Right. You can't look at Abraham or David,
right?
As Paul points out in Romans chapter 4.
But it does kind of get to, I think, helps us to see the direction to which even, there are people that deny the Pharisees were going that direction in Jesus' time. I think that's obvious that they clearly were.
Yeah.
They definitely are now. So what happened after the temple is gone? Well, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And he just said, we believe in salvation by works. Okay. So he said, and so what we try to do is be a good person. And he said, now the thing that really will separate this completely, other than we believe we're saved by faith, by grace through faith, he says is assurance.
Mm.
He said, I can't know.
Mm.
The only thing I can do is try to be good and hope for the best.
Wow. It's a rough way to live.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot writing on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Again, like whose standard of good person are we?
Right.
So everybody always thinks they're good. Of course, he thinks he said, I think if I die, because I think I've done good
Right.
and I'm a pretty good person.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody thinks they're a good person.
But even in the Catholic Church, unless you're like saint level,
Yeah.
they're pretty upfront. You'll probably
Right.
spend some time in purgatory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at least they recognize that the standard is perfection. At least they understand, like they have a heretical view of how you reach that standard. But at least they understand, like, unless you're like extraordinarily good, you're gonna spend some time in purgatory.
Right.
You got to work it off.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they don't believe in imputation, like you just described, the righteousness of Christ.
Right. Yeah. They
imputed to
believe
his
in
people.
infusion.
Right.
Right. You're given grace, and it's kind of like that.
It's
like
assisting.
It's like jumper cables.
Yeah. It's
right. It jumpstarts your own merits.
Yeah.
Right. Now you can start storing up those merits.
Right.
Right. Yeah. That's not what's going on here. Right. If that was the case, then why did Jesus need to come anyway? Because the priest could do that.
Right.
Right. So Jesus,
It's
he had to be this holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, exalted above the heavens priest, because you can't do it on your own. You don't need assistance. You need salvation.
right.
Right. You don't need your own merit system to kick in. You need someone else's righteousness to cover you. And that's a big difference. That's not some minor difference between Protestants and Catholics. Well, we're worshiping the same God, and we've got the same religion. It's not. It's a completely different way of salvation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Completely.
Which we'll see in this third point.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it then. You said once for all sacrifice?
Yep. Yeah.
Jesus is our once for all sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And I'm guessing this is probably where you talked about some of what Roman Catholics believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I started by talking about the Levitical priests and the sacrifices. We talked about that a little bit last week, but I read from Numbers chapter 28 and the sacrifices that had to take place every single day. That it was prescribed that they had to offer one lamb in the morning, one lamb in the evening, every single day. Then on the Sabbath, there was 2 goats that had to be sacrificed. So now you're up to 4. Right. Then at the first of the month, they had to offer some bulls, they had to offer some goats, they have to offer some lambs. And that's not even talking about the different festivals. That's not talking about individuals that come with their sacrifices. I ran across some information from the Jewish Talmud, which that's a more modern religious text that they use. And the Talmud described the priest as wading in knee-high blood. At one point, it says that 1.2 million animals were sacrificed in a day. Now, that could be exaggeration. That could be hyperbole. I don't know. But it's at least expressing the idea that they offered a lot of animal sacrifices. Like, this was not. If you're raised in Sunday school, you'd see pictures of the priest, and they're wearing white, and the stones are all clean, and the temple's all clean, and it was a butcher shop, right? Like it was a slaughterhouse.
It probably smelled like Dodge City, Kansas. You ever drive through there and smell Dodge City, Kansas? There's massive cattle feeding grounds all around. But there's huge, I don't know what you would call it, commercial butcher meat processing.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and you can smell it from miles away.
Oh goodness, you just go over to the Bar S factory. That'll wake you up.
Yeah,
clear the sinuses. Jay, go over there and just take a big whiff. It would have been. I mean, you would have heard the noises of these animals being killed, and just it would have been a constant reminder, and that's what Hebrews chapter 10 says. It's a constant reminder of sin. They're just constantly being reminded, this is what my sin deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that my sin can be dealt with is this animal has to die. And so they offer animal sacrifices over and over and over again. We'll hit on this when we get to chapter 8, and then 9 and 10, we'll really get into it. This is why it's such a big deal that the sacrificial system has ended. I've talked about it and asked this question. I don't know what modern day Judaism does. I mean, they talk about good works, and that's kind of like the replacement for the sacrificial system.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what the law prescribes. Right. They can try to change it, but unless they've got another Moses that's gone up on Mount Sinai and received another word from God that says, well, now the sacrificial system is gone, just replace it with being nice to your neighbor.
What's interesting,
that's that is not what the law of God requires. It requires a blood sacrifice.
It's interesting how much modern Judaism, like prayer practices, and Roman Catholics have in common, because they not only do they offer perpetual sacrifices, or not only is there the perpetual sacrifice that we see in the Roman Catholic, what they do, so theirs replaces the Old Testament, and they have a system of good works. They have a system of good works now in modern Judaism, but they both have tradition.
Right.
They have this tradition of the rabbis or the priests in Catholicism, and in the Roman Catholic Church, the tradition is as authoritative as the Bible.
Yeah.
So they interpret the Bible by the tradition.
Right.
That's how they do. And then the modern Jew, that's what they do. They interpret the Bible through it is modern. I mean, even though, this began sometime apparently after the destruction of the temple, these rabbis began to collect these teachings and created the Talmud.
Right.
And
it's not biblical Judaism. It's a collection of the rabbis' teachings and traditions.
But that's how they get to, we interpret the Old Testament through the teachings of these men. So you have that. You have the tradition of men on both sides, which is the lens through which they are interpreting God's word.
Right.
What we believe is you just go to God's word and it's plain. Now, of course, if you interpret God's word for what it says, it's the destruction of modern Judaism.
Right.
It can't exist.
Yeah. They if they really were taking the Old Testament seriously, they really were taking the law and the prophets seriously, they really have to deal with the fact that for 2,000 years there have been no animal sacrifices. There's been no temple. That's a problem.
There's no priesthood. I mean, they don't even know who's in line to be priests.
Yeah. But that is the strength of Christianity. We can look at that fact and say, well, there's a reason why it's ended. There's a reason why God allowed this to happen.
Right.
It's because the final sacrifice has come. And there's no need for animal sacrifices anymore, because that to which it pointed has appeared.
Right.
And Christ has offered once for all his body. And that is the sacrifice that actually atones for sin. It doesn't have to be offered day after day, year after year. It was a once for all time single sacrifice that actually took away sin.
Right.
And that when you compare that with the sacrifices that you see in Leviticus and Numbers that had to be offered just continuously, this is a massive, massive shift.
Yeah.
And it can only be explained if Christ is who he says he is, and his work actually accomplished what he said it would do.
Yeah.
Right. But I did read from the Catholic Catechism.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we can talk about that a little bit.
Most people don't realize that. I think even many people that are in the Catholic Church, they may not even realize this, but the Catholic priests believe that they are re-sacrificing Christ every day.
Yeah. We talked about this on a free for all when we showed the video of the priest doing his hocus pocus.
Right.
Right. But this is actually from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I actually have the Catechism. This is not some Protestant production. This is actually what the Catholic Church has in their Catechism. This is question number 1367. And it says, the sacrifice of Christ and the sacrifice of the Eucharist, the Mass, the bread and the wine, are one single sacrifice. The victim is one and the same now offers through the ministry a priest who then offered himself on the cross. Only the manner of offering is different. And since in this divine sacrifice, which is celebrated in the Mass, the same Christ who offered himself once in a bloody manner on the altar of the cross is contained and offered in an unbloody manner, this sacrifice is truly propitiatory.
Right. Yeah.
The Mass is the same sacrifice as Jesus on the cross. It's just a different manner.
Right.
A question was raised yesterday in community group. How can they call it an unbloody sacrifice when they believe that the wine actually turns into the blood of Christ?
Right. Yeah. That's the question I had right as you read it. Yeah. Because they believe it actually becomes blood.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. But the sacrifice is propitiatory. Like it actually satisfies the wrath of God.
Right.
Over and over and over again. It's blasphemous, but it also doesn't make any sense out of Hebrews 10, Hebrews 7. And it also confuses the two natures of Christ. Like in his body, Christ is somewhere right now. And his body can't be everywhere at once. In his divinity, he's everywhere. He's present everywhere. But in his body, he can't be everywhere. That's why he said it's better that I go away so that the Spirit can come.
Right.
Because in his body, he could be only with the disciples in one place. But the Spirit can be with them everywhere.
Right.
But with the Mass, if it's truly the body and blood of Christ, then he has to be in multiple places.
Right.
Multiple times. I was looking for a place where they said that it actually drags Christ out of heaven, but I couldn't find it.
That's I can pull it. I can bring it free for all Friday.
Yeah,
it's in a book written by I can't remember his name, but it's been giving like the blessing of the church. This book contains true Catholic doctrine. Okay, it's like official or whatever.
But as I was looking for it, I did find another quote.
You did,
and I'm glad you didn't hear it in the sermon, so I could read it to you. Here. This is from it's from a priest at St. Coleman Catholic Church. It's in a blog post called "The Importance of Going to Mass." Listen to what he says about the Mass. He says, every time I celebrate the Mass, I consummate my marriage to my bride, the church. And we could stop right there and just talk about that.
The priest said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. My words become the words of Christ as I am an alter Christus.
Another Christ.
Recite the words of institution. This is my body, which is given up for you. This is not a symbolic gesture. It's the reality of my spiritual fatherhood. My body belongs to the faithful, and in the reliving of the Lord's passion, I give of myself as Christ did on the cross.
Wow.
What do you think about that, Jay?
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Yeah. See, again, people don't understand that they believe that about the priesthood.
Yeah.
That they stand in the place of Christ as another Christ.
Yeah, and that they're actually giving themselves like Christ gave on the cross. I mean, it's... I told the church yesterday, these are the words of a literal antichrist.
Yeah.
Like, they're an ultra Christus. That is what antichrist means.
Yeah.
Another Christ. I thought that was really weird, though, that he said, every time I celebrate the Mass, I consummate my marriage with my bride, the church.
Right. Yeah.
Say what now?
Yeah.
So now this guy he's literally supplanting Christ as the groom. this is the reality of my spiritual fatherhood. It's mind-boggling.
Yep.
I spent some time on this. I almost didn't. I looked at the clock and I was like, well, I could skip this and save some time. But I went ahead with it because I think that for a lot of Christians, they see the Mass as just
Another way to take communion.
a fancy way of doing the Lord's Supper.
Mm-hmm.
So we take the Lord's Supper and we've got the little wafer and the little cup. They've got their own way of doing it, but we're essentially just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's always a good reminder for us. I mean, we're coming up on Reformation Day in about a month and a half. I think it's a good time for us to be reminded that we're not together. Like the Catholic Church is celebrating something that is opposed to the Scriptures, and it is not what we are doing when we celebrate the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
I wore my
I see it.
Protestant
I see you're
shirt.
wearing that.
I wore my Protestant shirt on purpose, Jay. It's like, what should I wear today? Man, we're going to be talking about the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
We're not together. There's been a push in the last several decades for this ecumenical movement of bringing Protestants and Catholics together. Pope Francis, he's trying to do that. He went, what was it, last year or the year before, that he went to Wittenberg and was talking about how great Martin Luther was.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't remember how many years. The years are just all jumbled together. The last several years, I don't remember when he did that, but talking about how great he is, and we're not together though. Like you cannot read this and say, well, it's the same thing.
You ever seen celebrities read mean tweets about themselves?
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
Yeah,
George, I could die happy right now today if the Pope could read Martin Luther's mean writings about the Pope.
Yeah.
On TV.
Yeah.
I could die a happy man, my friend.
Yeah. Well, he'd probably say, well, we're not the same. There were problems with the Catholic Church. I mean, they had the Counter-Reformation. They tried to clean up some of the abuses. But in the process, they produced the Council of Trent, which anathematized anyone that held to salvation by faith alone.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's when the Reformers said they're no longer a church.
Right.
Was the Council of Trent when they issued those anathemas.
Yeah.
And those anathemas have never been rescinded.
Right.
They've got Vatican II, but they didn't say, well, they never walked back the anathemas.
Right. Well, people who hold the Vatican II and they try to say, oh no, we believe you guys are believers and whatever. They just prove Luther's points all the more because he says popes and councils have often erred and contradicted each other.
Right.
Vatican II contradicts.
Right. Yeah.
Council of Trent.
Yeah. But I think it just reminds us that Christ's sacrifice is once for all. It is an atoning sacrifice that actually atoned. And it atoned for a particular people. It atoned for them definitely. God's wrath has been satisfied entirely, and we can have that assurance. If you're trusting in Christ, you can have that assurance. Martin Luther, he said, either sin is lying on your shoulders or it is lying on Christ, the Lamb of God. And if it is resting on Christ, then you are free.
Good.
And
awesome.
that should give us some comfort and encouragement.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Fourth point, God's perfect Son. Jesus is God's perfect Son.
Yep.
All right.
In case we have forgotten who we're talking about.
Right.
He spent the first 2 chapters of the book talking about who he is, that he is he's the eternal Son of God. He's the second person of the Trinity, but he is also in the incarnation. He's the long-awaited Davidic son. He's the Messiah. So the priest we're talking about here is he's truly God and he's truly man.
Right.
And so we need to remember that. We need
Uh-huh.
to remember that he's not just he's not like an angel. He's not just another man. He's the God man.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a little bit of time on that phrase. He's been made perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? This phrase that he has been made perfect, and we see this in chapter 2, chapter 5, and then here in chapter 7, and it means that he has accomplished his mission.
Right.
He came in the flesh. He experienced all of our weaknesses, hunger, thirst. He got tired. He learned to trust God, which we've talked about this before. But these are things that I think a lot of Christians, they don't really think about. Jesus, in his incarnation, he had to learn to rely on the Holy Spirit.
Right.
He had to learn how to resist temptation. As the eternal Son of God, he didn't know what temptation was like. In his incarnation, he actually experienced temptation and learned to resist it. He obeyed. He learned how to obey, even to the point of death.
Yeah, it's something a lot of people, I think, really struggle with because not thinking through it maybe in a slower, more clear fashion, try to be more precise. I think people think, okay, well, wasn't he was perfect from the time he was born.
Right.
But really what they should understand is he's sinless.
We're
sinless.
Right. We're not talking about his essence in being made perfect. We're not talking about his being.
Right.
Because we've already talked about that. He's holy, innocent, unstained,
Right.
separated from sinners. In his attributes, he is perfect.
Uh-huh.
That's not what we're talking about here when he's using the word made perfect. That's not what he's talking about.
Right.
That phraseology we talked about last week, that the law makes nothing perfect. He's complete.
Yeah.
As the Messiah.
Uh-huh.
He had to come. He had to be incarnated.
Right.
He couldn't just appear, be crucified, and then leave again.
Right.
He had to live for 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
He had the tabernacle amongst us. He had to learn what it meant to obey your parents.
Mm-hmm.
He had to know what it meant to resist temptation, to trust in God when he's out in the wilderness and he's hungry. He had to learn that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. He had to learn that in an experiential way.
Right.
He had to learn to obey God and to say, not my will, but your will be done, even to the point of death on the cross.
Uh-huh.
So that in his overcoming, he never sinned. He perfectly obeyed. He perfectly resisted temptation. He perfectly trusted in God. But in those 33 years of living, he now is able to sympathize with us. He actually is able to be a compassionate high priest who understands what we're going through, because he knows what it's like to be hungry.
Right.
He knows what it's like to be thirsty. He knows what it's like to be tired.
Yeah.
He knows what it's like when it's hard to obey God. And so he's become the perfect high priest. He's not like these other high priests that were also sinners. And maybe they're from a different background. They've had different experiences. They don't know, he knows. He knows what it's like. You can never say God doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the incarnation, Jesus came and he does. He understands.
I want to throw something out here, but I don't know if I should hold it for a free-for-all Friday. There's a big debate online about is anxiety a sin? Did you see that?
I did see that.
Blowing up, man. Blowing
that
up.
That pops up every once in a while. This isn't the first time I've seen this.
Right.
Yeah.
What, should we hold it for free-for-all Friday?
Sure, that's a pretty big topic. We could talk about that. We could talk about that.
And so that I was going to say, did Jesus experience anxiety?
Okay. All right.
And if he didn't, how can he sympathize with me in my weakness?
Okay. Yeah.
I really on Twitter wanted to blow the whole thing apart.
That doesn't sound like you, Jay. You s- You're the unifier. You're
There's
not
I don't like it when people take really strong stances on things um, that are I think can be answered even just through understanding maybe theology of the incarnation a little better,
Mhm.
but also paying attention to um, what's mentioned and what Jesus went through,
Mhm.
in the hours before he was
Right.
handed over to be
Right.
crucified, and then understanding what sinful anxiety is.
Right.
Right.
I think you just answered the question, Jay.
Yeah.
Just-
But it'll be a good
Yeah.
discussion, I think.
Right. It's like saying anger is a sin.
Right. Yeah.
Did Jesus ever get angry? There's sinful anger,
Yeah.
and there's righteous anger.
Right.
Um, yeah. Yeah. We'll hold off.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good discussion.
Yeah. I saw one person that said having PTSD is a sin.
Okay.
So I was like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You really want to talk about it? Well, hold on. Can you hold off? Are you able to?
I can hold off,
All
I
right.
guess.
Okay. We'll hold off. Don't get sick.
Hopefully I don't
Don't
get
get-
the swine flu before then. I guess that's what I'm due next for, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, soon,
Guys, I can't come in. I got Ebola.
Hey,
You got what?
soon, George. Soon, I can go to to the CDC and I can say, just extract
Yeah.
and create the cure. What is it? Who doesn't? No one knows, but I've got it all.
You're like the absorbing man.
Yeah.
You remember absorbing man in the Marvel comics? Yeah. That's what you are. You're just absorbing all of these sicknesses.
Yeah.
Stay away from me. That's all I'm saying. Are we 6 feet apart? Not
We're
quite.
close.
Yeah,
It's
we're not
close.
quite.
Yeah.
Not quite. So Jesus has been made perfect. He becomes the perfect high priest for us. So he's not just another weak person beset with his own weaknesses and sins, and so he can't truly help you. He is the Son of God who has been made perfect, and so in whatever need we have, whatever trial, temptation, he's everything that we need.
Right.
And this is not. I gave a little sneak peek into chapter 8, towards at the end, because we like to just kind of have these, like, this is a mental exercise. Like, here's how the Bible describes Jesus, and we just kind of leave it at that. But chapter 8, verse 1 says, now the point of all of this, the point of what we're saying is this: we have such a high priest.
Yeah.
This is not hypothetical. It's not just for seminary professors to talk about. This is an actual experiential reality for Christians. You have this high priest. Jesus belongs to you. He's yours, and you belong to him. And I think that we should find that to be incredibly encouraging.
Mm-hmm. It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I don't have to get married to Fred every Friday or Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Priest Fred?
I knew that's what you were saying, but
Or whatever. Yeah,
came out
whatever his
real
name
weird.
is.
It came out real weird.
I mean, it came out of his mouth weird. What do you want me to do with it, George?
Yeah.
He made it weird. Yeah, it's a great comfort. This is
You made it weird, but they made it weird first.
They made it weird first, yeah. It is a great, incredible comfort, and so I'm looking forward to you unpacking chapter 8, which you said is like, hey, here it is right here,
Yeah.
and so you're going to go through it all in one time, is what you said, chapter
there's
8.
13 verses.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it all next week, and then we'll really, I think we'll really zoom in on the new covenant.
Yeah.
And talk about that.
All right. Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you. Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad the camera made it. And it was questionable for a little bit, but we still need a new one. So that remains. Us begging still remains. If this has been helpful, beneficial to you, hopefully it helps you to be more conformed to Christ. If it has, you can like this podcast. You can share this podcast with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't. That'll help more people see it. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you want. Help get the word out. It's our hope and desire to serve people and help you to become more and more conformed to Christ. See you next time.